The fluorescent lights of the hospital cafeteria buzzed overhead as Sarah Martinez stared at her, untouched coffee, watching the steam rise and disappear into nothing. She'd been doing that a lot lately, watching things disappear. Her marriage. Her sense of purpose. The future she'd planned. 3 months ago, her husband had walked out with barely an explanation, leaving her questioning every choice she'd ever made. Now she sat alone in this sterile space, a pediatric nurse on her lunch break, wondering if the emptiness would ever fade. That's when she heard the sob. It was quiet, restrained, the kind of crying a man does when he's trying desperately not to fall apart in public. Sarah looked up to see him 2 tables away, mid-30s, rumpled shirt, face buried in his hands. Something about the raw desperation in his shoulders made her forget her own pain for a moment. She'd seen that kind of grief before in the pediatric ward. It was the grief of a parent watching their child suffer. Before she could think better of it, Sarah found herself walking toward him with a handful of napkins. "I'm sorry," she said softly, extending the napkins. "I don't mean to intrude, but you look like you could use these." The man looked up, his brown eyes red-rimmed and exhausted. For a moment, he seemed startled that anyone had noticed him. Then, as if the small gesture of kindness broke something inside him, he started talking. "My daughter," he said, his voice cracking. "She's upstairs. She has leukemia. Tomorrow is her 7th birthday, and all she wants is for her mother to be there. But her mother—" He stopped, pressing his palms against his eyes. "My wife left us 6 months ago. She couldn't handle Lily's diagnosis. She just disappeared." Sarah felt her heart constrict. She lowered herself into the chair across from him without asking permission. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. The man, he introduced himself as David. Chen continued as if he'd been holding these words inside for too long. "Lily keeps asking when Mommy is coming home. The doctors say she's in remission, but her immune system is still fragile. They don't want to upset her right now. Don't want to add any stress. And her birthday—" His voice broke completely. "She wants a family party. She wants her mom to see her blow out the candles. She wants to be normal for one day." Sarah didn't know what possessed her to say it. Maybe it was because she understood abandonment. Maybe it was because she'd spent 3 months drowning in her own loneliness. And here was someone whose pain dwarfed her own. Maybe it was simply because this man's daughter was the same age as the children she cared for every day, and she couldn't bear the thought of one more child suffering. What if someone pretended, she heard herself say, just for the party, just so she could have that one perfect day? David stared at her confused. Sarah took a breath. What if I pretended to be her mother? Just for a week leading up to her birthday, just so she could have what she needs right now. The words hung in the air between them, absurd and impossible and desperate. "You don't even know us," David whispered. "Why would you do that?" "Because someone should," Sarah said simply. "Because she's 7 years old and she's been through hell, and if I can give her 1 week of happiness, one birthday where she feels whole, why wouldn't I?" 48 hours later, Sarah found herself walking into room 412 with David, her heart hammering against her ribs. They'd spent those 2 days preparing, looking at photos of his wife, learning the details of their life together, creating a believable story about why Mommy had been away. Sarah had even taken a week off work using her saved vacation days. Lily was tiny against the hospital pillows, her head wrapped in a bright purple scarf, her face pale but lit with an eager hopefulness that shattered Sarah's heart into pieces. "Lily, sweetheart," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "Look who came back for your birthday." The little girl's eyes went wide. For one terrible moment, Sarah thought the child would see through the charade immediately. Then Lily's face crumpled with joy. "Mommy," she whispered. "You came back?" Sarah moved to the bedside, kneeling so she was eye level with Lily. "Hi, baby," she said softly, using the endearment David had told her his wife always used. "I'm so sorry I was away." "I'm here now." Lily threw her thin arms around Sarah's neck, and Sarah felt the child trembling against her. "I knew you'd come back for my birthday. I knew it." Over the next 5 days, Sarah lived a life that wasn't hers. She read Lily bedtime stories in the hospital room. She helped the little girl practice walking the halls with her IV pole, making a game of it, counting steps, and celebrating small victories. She sat with Lily during blood draws and treatments, holding her hand and singing silly songs to distract her from the pain. And slowly, impossibly, Sarah felt herself healing too. She'd thought her own heartbreak had destroyed her capacity for love, but Lily was teaching her otherwise. Every smile, every "I love you, Mommy," every moment the little girl's eyes lit up, it filled spaces in Sarah's heart she'd thought would stay empty forever. David watched it all with a mixture of gratitude and guilt. "You're a natural," he told Sarah one evening when Lily had fallen asleep. They sat in the hallway sharing vending machine coffee. "She's happier than she's been in months." "She's an incredible kid," Sarah said and meant it. "Why are you really doing this?" David asked. "And don't say because someone should. There's more to it." Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Because I needed to remember that I could matter to someone," she finally said. "My ex-husband made me feel invisible, like I wasn't enough. But with Lily, every story I read, every hand I hold, it matters. I can see it mattering, and maybe that's selfish, but it's healing something in me I didn't know how to fix." David's eyes were soft with understanding. "It's not selfish. It's beautiful." On the morning of Lily's birthday, the nurses helped transform her hospital room into a party wonderland. Sarah had stayed up late the night before blowing up balloons, her fingers cramping, tears streaming down her face as she thought about what would happen when this week ended. But she pushed those thoughts aside as Lily woke up, gasping with delight at the decorations, at the small cake David had smuggled in, at the pile of gifts wrapped in bright paper. "Make a wish, sweetheart," Sarah said as they gathered around the cake, its 7 candles flickering. Lily closed her eyes tight. Then she looked up at Sarah with pure, unfiltered love. "I wish for you to stay forever, Mommy." Sarah's heart shattered and soared at the same moment. After the party, after Lily had opened her gifts and eaten cake and finally fallen asleep, with a smile on her face, David and Sarah stood in the hallway facing the inevitable. "I have to tell her the truth," David said quietly. "Tomorrow. The doctors say she's strong enough now, and she deserves honesty." Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. Will you tell her that I loved her, that every moment was real even if the relationship wasn't?" David took Sarah's hand. "She knows. Anyone could see it." He paused. "What you did, pretending. To be someone you're not, to give her what she needed. That's not deception. That's love in its purest form." The next day, David sat down with Lily and gently explained the truth. Sarah waited anxiously in the cafeteria, that same spot where this had all begun, not knowing what to expect. When David finally came to find her, his eyes were wet. "She wants to see you," he said. Sarah's hands shook. As she walked back to room 412, Lily was sitting up in bed, her eyes red from crying but clear with understanding beyond her years. "You're not my real Mommy," Lily said. "No, sweetheart. I'm not," Sarah admitted, kneeling by the bed. "But you were here when I needed a mommy," Lily continued. "And Daddy says you took time, off work, and stayed with me even though you didn't have to." "I wanted to," Sarah said. "Every second with you was a gift." Lily reached out and took Sarah's hand. "Can you still visit me? Even though you're not my real Mommy? Because you feel like family." Sarah looked at David, who nodded with tears in his eyes. "I would love that more than anything," Sarah whispered. 6 months later, Sarah sat in the park watching Lily run through the grass, her hair growing back in soft curls, her laughter ringing out like music. David sat beside her on the bench, their shoulders touching comfortably. "She's in full remission," David said, his voice thick with emotion. "The doctors say it's a miracle." "She's a fighter," Sarah agreed. Lily ran over, throwing herself between them. "Can Sarah stay for dinner, Daddy, please?" "If she wants to," David said, looking at Sarah with something warm and hopeful in his eyes. "I'd love to," Sarah said, and realized she meant it more than she'd meant anything in her life. She'd walked into that hospital cafeteria broken and alone. She'd pretended to be someone else to save a little girl's birthday. But in the process, she'd found something real, a family built not on biology or obligation, but on choice and love, and the fierce courage it takes to show up for someone who needs you. Sometimes the greatest truths come wrapped in pretending. Sometimes you have to lose yourself to find out who you really are. And sometimes, when you open your heart to heal someone else's wounds, you discover that you've been healing your own all along.